guys, welcome.
So let's start. Maybe I can say some words first, if you don't mind, Lucas.
Yeah.
So welcome all to this reading group on Žižek's Lacrimae Rerum. As you know, this will be our first meeting, our first session of 5 we are planning to do this year, to read this book by Žižek. And actually, this is the first reading group that we are organizing in the Cine Lab, which is the Filmmakers lab on cinema and philosophy. And we thought that this book could be a very interesting way to start this group, because it introduces to the world of film philosophy, and it also can help us to understanding our spectatorship connection with films, and not just regarding Kieślowski, Hitchcock, and Tarkovsky and Lynch, which are the main filmmakers that Žižek talks, but as you know, he mentions many more, and this diversity is precisely one of his writing style. And we also thought it could be a way to start, it could be a good way to start to think about the connection between psychoanalysis and film theory, and also on ideology and cinema. So Lucas will be guiding us through this session. I thank him a lot for his help, and just some practical stuff. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand, and I will try to give you the opportunity, because so far we are a huge group. And another practical stuff we need to decide today, I don't know at the beginning or in the end of the session, will be our next session in how can we organize this reading group. We thought it could be monthly, once in a month, on Thursdays at this hour, but we can decide that. And I give the word to Lucas to introduce himself.
Hello. Because I think Joanna is just, I think your microphone maybe is. It's just, sorry.
Sorry.
Good, yeah, I think it worked. Thank you. So welcome you guys, and I'm very happy that we're starting this reading group. And this idea came after a talk that I had with Susana. How can we think psychoanalysis and cinema? And above all, Žižek is the person that brings cinema and psychoanalysis together in the mainstream culture. And when Susana approached me and said, "Oh, did you read Lacrimae Rerum?" And I said, "Yes, I know this book, but I think it would be nice for CineLab first to read it together." I think it was an opportunity to start a reading group and invite people that are interested in talking about psychoanalysis and Žižek and ideology and Lacan and Deleuze and Guattari, and see what can the study of psychoanalysis and cinema brings also to philosophy, and how can we work in this multiplicity and in this littoral. And littoral is a nice word, because littoral also can, when you read, you say the literal, but when you speak, you work between metaphor and literality. So what can we approach with cinema that is a little bit beyond metaphor? And I think this is a main issue here. Like, how can we produce something that is outside of only representation with cinema? That's a question that I think it's important for us here, at least for me, and I bring it for you guys. I want also for you guys to introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit like What are your concerns when reading Žižek and when trying to think cinema and psychoanalysis together? And above all, when I want to think psychoanalysis and cinema together, I want to try to think about emancipation. And how can we as psychoanalysts or filmmakers or artists or critics or philosophers can emancipate ourselves in a way to produce theory or to work clinically with cinema and psychoanalysis? How can we work with theory and practice together in a way to elaborate something else? Or because when we read Žižek's book, there's this idea of the Lacrimae Rerum. That is the title of the book, and Žižek is gonna put it above all in the first essay, that the Lacrimae Rerum is this object that cries in the middle of the society. So it appears to the symbolic, and this object has to cry, so you can have a kind of like wall or barrier against the real. So the symbolic would really appear in a communal way. And he's going to say that this is the opposite of the psychoanalytical cure, because the psychoanalytical cure would be how can you transpass the ghost or the fantasy with PH or the phantom or the symptom, and you're going to work the real, the imaginary, and the symbolic together. And so when Žižek is trying to work with cinema, he's trying to see how the symptom is building up. So how can you build something up so we can work with the society, with the communal, with the symbolic, and in a way get away with the real, like try to deal with this. I'm a person that studied before Žižek and Lacan, I'm a person that studied more Deleuze and Guattari. So I'm very inclined to work with the real, what I find sometimes more interesting. And when he talks about the Lacrimae Rerum, when I read the title of the book, I mistook. And I said, okay, maybe he's talking about this object. That is the object that appears instead of the lack. The Lacan is going to talk in the seminar 10. When this object appears instead of the lack, it's the place for anxiety. And when anxiety appears, we are a little bit more closer to the real. So I thought maybe Žižek's talking about this. But when you read the book, actually, he's talking about something else, about this wall that you're going to build with cinema for fantasy to happen. So my proposition here, and as a hypothesis, is like, how can we work in this tension between real and symbolic? And yes, that's pretty much what I'm opening with my questions with the book that we are going to read together. And I wanted you guys to introduce yourselves, like what you're interested like when thinking about Žižek. And Žižek works with 4 filmmakers in this book. There's going to be Kieślowski, Hitchcock, Tarkovsky and Lynch. So we had this idea of having this first session, so we get to know each other. And for every new session is going to be a little bit more focused on the chapter. But if you go to the chapters of the book, he goes to everywhere. He doesn't go to only Kieślowski or only Lynch. So it's pretty much like, what can we build up or elaborate together when we read one of the chapters? So we have one chapter for each session. And the sessions are going to be around 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. And if there's something more, we can share through emails or get to know each other. Because I think this should be a clinical space in a way that that's my hypothesis, a little bit like contradicting the Žižek. How can we also make some kind of like tears inside of this wall of the symbolic and work clinically towards a psychoanalytical cure? Because I'm a practiced psychoanalyst myself, so I cannot like abandon this and only think about the symbolic. I think we have to deal with like, how can we work with the symptom and find something else outside of this? And I mean, I think I talked too much, and now I would like to open the mic for you guys to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you and like which of the chapters from the main filmmakers that he works with you would like to focus a little bit more. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to guide the reading, but it's just like maybe you can like see something that is interesting for you when you bring for us. So that's it. And thank you for coming. Anyone? Do you want to start, Marisa? It's just because you are the first after me, so that's why.
Não, eu ainda sugeri que a gente tentasse. Oh, sorry. I suggested we could start in alphabetical order because usually people are shy. No one wants to be the first to talk. But okay. And please cut me down, Lucas, because I tend to talk too much. I apologize because I usually, when I am speaking, I make many mistakes in English. But well, I am from the State University of Maringá, Paraná, Brazil. And I started to study Žižek in 2007 when I did a postdoctoral research in the United States with Philip Rothwell. He was in the United States then, and I made my postdoc with him. And it absolutely changed my life, my academical life. And I devoted, since 2008, my studies in order to create a methodology to apply Žižek's thoughts on literature. So I lead a group at CNPq, and I have my MA and PhD advisees, my students, and we are trying to create this methodology. And I always feel I don't have enough time to study Žižek and Lacan because I focus mainly on Lacanian readings because they are less polemic. I know that Žižek's readings of Hegel and Heidegger are very polemic, and but his Lacanian approach is widely approved. So I focus on his Lacanian readings, and I use a lot the oh my God, his book on violence. It's very good to work with undergraduate students. So that's why I'm here. When I heard, well, there's a bunch of people from different backgrounds who wants to read and discuss Žižek, I said, I have to be in it.
Thank you. And there's something else we're working with multiplicity, that this book is it's very strange in the way that it was translated, because it was written in English or French. And then the English version, that is the American, that is published in the US, is very different from the French one. And it's also very different from the Portuguese and the Brazilian and the Spanish one. So you guys can find the book, or I have some PDFs, especially from the English, the French, and the Brazilian one. I can send you guys if you ask, if you don't find it. But we are going to work with the multiplicity of the translations, because all the translations are different. It is as even there's not like an original copy of this book. So I think it is something that enriches our debate. And for you guys, when you have to read like in the next sessions, that's good for you to focus. Even if you in one version you don't find the text or the paragraph, it's fine. You can bring it up and we're going to discuss. Okay. And thank you, Marisa. I don't know if Roxana is on. Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, sorry. So my name is Roxana. I'm a student from sociology I'm here because actually it's quite a coincidence, but Alfonso, who's also here, shared with me the session, and I just started reading this essay with the idea of watching at the same time the movie, especially the Christoph's ones. So yeah, I'm just for the curiosity.
Good, good. You're welcome to. Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Isabel, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Maria Isabel. I'm a Brazilian analyst, psychoanalyst. I work with Lucas. I thank you the opportunity to be here. And my interest in this group is the possibility of reading this book that I have never read before. I enjoy Zizek's work. And I don't know, I was thinking here, Lucas had at the beginning, the question between the tension between symbolic and the real. And it's interesting because it's we come from an imaginary production, the cinema, to discuss real and symbolic. And this is what interests me most of all in this group. I also thank Susana for the organization of the group.
Thank you. And Miguel?
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you, Susana and Lucas, for putting this group together. My name is Miguel Rico. I'm doing the PhD in communication sciences at Nova, specializing in film and television. I don't know, I find Zizek's character quite curious. I think he has very bright and compelling ideas. I read a couple texts from this book last summer, and some of the fundamental ideas stayed with me, particularly about Hitchcock, but I confessed that I think a majority of the essays have already faded completely, because he tries to put things in a accessible form, but I think most of the times it's a very complex, he has a very complex line of thought, which is also interesting. But I find these readings very interesting, and I really like the fact that it deconstructs film through the lens of psychoanalysis, and walks between psychoanalysis and film medium as one. I remember a very striking essay about Hitchcock's ideal remake that really struck me. It's about the Gus Van Sant remake. It's a very interesting essay. And I don't know, I would like to also recommend, while we follow this book, The Perverse Guide to Cinema, the documentary, that I feel it's almost an extension of his book. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And of course, when Susana was talking to me about like making a study on Zizek, because he's going to work with psychoanalysis and cinema, we said, oh, let's make it as a reading group, or trying to work as maybe a cartel for the Lacanians here. So when you think about the cartel usually is a small group, it's like 4 people, and there's a +1, and this +1 is not a person that's going to be a teacher or a professor or a master. It's actually a person that is going to like make things wobbling in a way. So how can in a group of people you have like a structured thought? So I mean, in a group we think that, and oh, this is the correct, and then there's this +1 that is an extra thought or something. There's a difference. And when you're talking, Miguel, about like, oh, maybe I didn't get this or that, that's amazing, because that's very important for us to work with. Like, what are the difficulties there? Or I don't agree with this, or I think this is bullshit. This is important here. And can you introduce yourself, Alexandra?
Well,
Well, good afternoon. My name is Alexandra. I'm an artist, a graphic artist, illustrator, and a PhD student from Autonomous University of Madrid. And actually, I was really inspired and interested by this idea of this reading, because my PhD, although I'm an artist, but my PhD is dedicated to cinema, and in particular to work of Albert Serra, a Spanish or Catalonian film director. And I think that exactly this chapter or this part, which has to do with psychoanalysis, and this part is not that developed in my work as I wish it to be. So that could be like a very good motive or inspiration to force to develop this part. And I haven't never read this book, so I'm very interested, and I think it could be a good beginning for this development process. So thank you very much for this idea. I think it's really wonderful.
Thank you, thank you. And yeah, if you read the book and something comes from both of you guys, like thesis, what you guys are writing, bring up, and we can have the emails, and you guys can send text or something. It's always welcome there. And Christine?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Mathis. I am a writer and translator of ancient Greek esoteric poetry. And I met Lucas in the Oscillations study group, which is an anthropology study group, because I'm also an anthropologist. Appropriately, the esoteric material that I translate, which is mostly magical in origin from the early Greek period, it uses a language of multiplicity. The poetry is very generative in its language, intentionally so. And so I've always been attracted to Lacanian and thought as a way to think through this question of esoteric language. So that's where I'm coming from. Lucas knows I had the great fortune to study with Žižek at Princeton in the 90s. Briefly, I wish I could say I remembered more of that. But in any case, I'm happy to be here. And because I am not in any way, shape, or form a psychoanalyst, I am very happy to learn from you all and converse.
Thank you, thank you. And you don't have to be a psychoanalyst. I think most of the people here are not psychoanalysts, and we are actually inside of a philosophy department. So
I'm not a philosopher either.
Good. And this idea of the esoteric is also that I was reading for I don't know why, for today's sessions I was reading I even shared with Eric, that is the next person that I'm going to ask to introduce himself. But I was reading the Logique du Sein from Deleuze, and he talks a lot about the esoteric words of Lewis Carroll, and in a psychoanalytical way. And I think we can really try to operate with the idea of the esoterical when thinking with Žižek. But yes, I think in the next sessions we can develop this. Eric, can you introduce yourself?
Ciao everyone. I'm Eric, a colleague of Susana and also of Patricia at CineLab, the host institution for this wonderful initiative. So thanks Susana and Lucas for putting this together. And it's funny, I'm reading the notes. I read Žižek such a long time ago, and it's very nice to refresh that. And I'm reading my notes from that time, and I got reminded I did my PhD on contemporary Chinese cinema, and my co-supervisor, she was a Žižekian, Tonglin Lu. So I have a nice thought for her today. So yeah, thanks Lucas for leading this group.
Thank you. And Breno?
Hello, everyone. It's very good to meet you. Thank you, Lucas, for your invitation. And it's funny that Christine said that she came from maybe a distant field. I come from an even more distant field. I'm coming from finance. There is nothing to do with psychoanalysis, either philosophy.
There's
But yeah.
a lot to do with Eric, actually.
Yeah. But I started my analysis about 3 years ago, and I have encountered with maybe my desire of studying psychoanalysis. And when I received this invitation from Lucas, I felt like this is the opportunity to go more into this. So yeah, it's great to meet you. Thank you, Lucas. It's good to meet you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alexandre?
Hi, hi everyone. My name is Alexandre. I'm actually now in Cariri, in the south of Ceará, in Brazil. I'm professor at the university, at the Federal University of Cariri, and I give lessons of a discipline called Media and Subjectivity, where I use both of the documentaries of Žižek, the cinema and the ideology, and I use some books of Žižek, but I never used Lacrimae Rerum. And this group is a way to start thinking about that. I read Žižek since 2004 when I bought Welcome to the Desert of the World and of the Rio. And since then, I've been reading Žižek. I use it in my thesis, my PhD thesis. I used Žižek to his reading about Antigone, and that's what actually I'm studying now, the readings of psychoanalysis and queer theory about the myth of Antigone. And I'm always reading Žižek, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandre. And Max, can you introduce yourself?
Hello. Yeah, thanks, Lucas, for inviting me. I'm also coming from the Oscillations group. So I'm not in academia, but I have a personal interest. So I'm in analysis personally, and I'm trying to understand better, does it work? How does it work? And just any communication with people who are into Lacan and Žižek is great. It's a chance to learn from people and share something. So it's a great opportunity. And yeah, cinema it's a great connection because I've been watching a lot of classics. So I have actually some fresh memories of Kieślowski, Hitchcock, Lynch, and so this is a perfect Žižek's book for a group reading.
Thank you. And just you guys were talking about the documentary, and we can also have space for the documentary, even though it isn't in one of the chapters, but we have space for you guys to talk about the documentary. The two that there are, especially the first one on the pervert's guide for cinema, because this idea of the perversion, it is above all in the beginning of the documentary, Žižek is going to say that he doesn't want neither of the pills that Morpheus is offering to Neo, and that's a very good concept of. It's actually a very clear concept of being a pervert, because you don't want neither of the options that the myth gives you. So you're going to develop a third one or a fourth one, and you're going to, in a way, deny this idea that the myth is going to give you options. So I don't want neither of them. I don't want anything from this. I want to build another story. And even though in the documentary, sometimes he's going to write about develop this idea of the wall of the symbolic that's going to structure itself. I think when he comes with the title about this idea of being a pervert, so finding other ways, he's also diverging and trying to find a more ethical way of dealing with the symbolic and less moral way of dealing with the symbolic. So that's it. Eric, can you introduce yourself, please? And thank you, Max.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Let me know if you can't hear me or anything like that. But my name is Eric. I'm from Chicago in the United States. I'm a clinician. I work largely with kids too. So I think recently, I guess I've been sort of returning to my interest in Žižek and also sort of returning to my interest in cinema, but it's been ongoing for a while, right? But maybe this, offers an opportunity to sit down and read something and to, put something together, put some thoughts together about things. And I do feel like, sometimes working over screens like this or something reminds me of cinema in a way, and working with kids in general too, the kind of images that children produce and things like that, right? I think, at least in my mind, seems to have something to do with this, or can be articulated in an interesting way, right? So I'm interested in a lot of the same questions I think that have come up about, the tension between the symbolic and the real and the imaginary there too, and the idea of the Santam too, right? And how these things might be sort of tied together one way or another. So thank you for having me, right? So I found this group randomly through Unbehagen, the email list, and so Jameson Webster said something about the group, and, I appreciate being able to participate. And I wish my Portuguese were better. I could speak, Portuguese with you all, but it's not that good. So obrigado, I guess.
Thank you a lot. And also after the pandemic, especially for clinicians or psychoanalysts, psychoanalysis became something much more closer to cinema than people would imagine, or actually would be able to talk when all the practices start being online. So it became data, it became audio and visual. So in a way, how can you put a person in the divan if the person is working with you online? So those questions are also something that can appear here, and it's pretty much talking about image and about cinema and psychoanalysis. You can bring up this stuff. It's always welcome. Also working with cinema and kids, with making images and videos. I mean, it's very welcome. Thank you.
And there is a recording going on right now, so we are making a movie.
Okay, yeah, we can. I was talking to Susana. Maybe, I don't know, in the end we can make a group text, and I don't know, see how it's going to be the transcribes of those meetings. I don't know, but it's something we just recorded for. Let's see. We are in an era in a way that we don't admit losing, isn't it? So we try to keep everything. So as a person that studies Lacan, sometimes like, how are you going to deal when you cannot record something, when you cannot keep a picture or something? But anyway, I'm talking too much. Joanna, please.
Oh, hello. My name is Joana Lamas. I'm a psychoanalyst. I work with Lucas in CPP. This actually was the first book from Žižek that I've read it, but I've read it like a lot of years ago. I only remember a few parts. I'm gonna read it again, and I do appreciate a lot Žižek also because he's very popular, and in one way I think his popularity has to do with cinema too, because it takes cinema to talk about complex things and about psychoanalysis, and I think it's amazing because I think a little bit mainstream, and also yes, there's the political part, and I think that's very important. So it is I think it's a very good opportunity to work with people from other languages, and for me cinema always has something to do with psychoanalysis because of the interpretation. I think that's it. So I'm very happy to be part of this group and to see where this group is going to take us.
Thank
That's
you,
it.
Joanna.
I don't know if you listened to me because
No, yeah, it was okay. Thank you. And
my connection is not very good. I don't know.
but I think there was some kind of, but it worked fine. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we have a little delay, but it's fine. Thank you. And something else that it's very important for us to mention, and we can bring up in the next meetings, is that like psychoanalysis and cinema, they were developed and established in a way in the same decade of the last decade of the 19th century. So they came up together, and we can also here try to elaborate on like where it comes, like what are the connections there? Is psychoanalysis closer to cinema than to, I don't know, psychology? Maybe, since it is an approach and a communal approach of language. I don't know. So there
yes,
are some questions.
If we think in interpretation, of course, I think yes.
No, it's a question that comes to my mind a lot. I mean, I'm a psychoanalyst, but I didn't graduate from psychology.
I know.
Yeah, so
and I graduate from psychology. And psychology for me it was like more a defense in front of psychoanalysis than something that helped me in the psychoanalysis. I had my effort was more running away from the psychology academy. Then it was then I think I learned everything about psychoanalysis after the psychology course. So
thank you.
Maybe cinema.
And Kendra, please, can you introduce yourself? Welcome.
Yes, hello. Thanks for having me. Great to be here and hear a little bit about where everyone's coming from. I'm just finishing up my doctoral training in clinical psychology in New York in the US. And have for a very long time been interested in sort of all the overlap between the arts and psychoanalysis. My program is very psychoanalytically oriented. I'm at NYU postdoc doing my externship right now, and will continue sort of in this vein. But so the arts and psychoanalysis, I'm currently working on a paper applying a framework from narrative theory, so from literary studies to as Joanna said, to do an interpretation or sort of hermeneutic reading of psychotherapy transcripts. So looking at transcript from psychoanalytic sessions, kind of coding them as story versus discourse, and then a third category of transferential discourse. So I won't go into that, but just very interested in the overlap. Also, I studied cinema during my undergraduate, and recently reread The Sublime Object of Ideology, and just very interested in Žižek and Lacan, but a little bit maybe a little bit greener than some folks here, but very happy to be here, and we'll be excited to see what comes of our conversations together.
Thank you a lot. And I mean, even though you didn't read a lot of Žižek, it's stunning, the narrative and story, and how can you think this in clinic? I mean, it's very welcome, and thank you. And Sophia, can you introduce yourself, please? I think you're muted. You're muted. Yeah. Can you turn, Susana, can you turn her mic on? Because you are, I think when you are the coordinator from the Zoom, you can maybe.
No, I just can ask her to put the sound on, but I can't move the. No.
Oh, you're
Sorry.
mute. Maybe you can write. You know, but this is something interesting. When, for instance, when the pandemic came and I had to work with some patients that wanted to keep like with sessions. One of the patients couldn't do it from the house because the person was very like, oh, I don't want to talk inside of my house. So the person was trying to make the sessions writing. But that's difficult. But if you want to introduce yourself writing like Pedro did, you can try, Sophia. If you can write, and then we go to Afonso. Or you try meanwhile to turn it on. Hello, Afonso.
Hi, I'm Afonso. Well, I like. I'm very eclectic about Žižek, from metaphysics, ontology, psychoanalysis, Lacan, Freud, Hegel, all that, to quantum physics. Everything for me is good food for thought. So, a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, welcome. And Fernanda?
Sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm Fernanda. I'm talking from São Paulo. I'm psychoanalyst, doing my PhD in art history in Vainova, and I'm a colleague from Lucas at CPP. I'm very happy to be here to get closer to this book of Žižek that I have not yet read, but I hope we can learn and share nice things here. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Fernanda. And you're writing about psychoanalysis in your PhD, isn't it? About psychoanalysis and painting, isn't it?
And painting, yes. I do. I try to connect some theoretical stuff with the painting that I'm studying. Thank you very much, Lucas and Susana.
Lucas, you're muted.
So, hello?
Yeah, you're muted, Lucas.
Now I'm fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry. No, it's the next person after Fernanda. I don't know your name because it's the name of the cell phone. Samsung SM. Oh. So maybe Patricia. Hello, Patricia.
Hi, me? Yeah. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm a colleague of Susana and Eric, and now Lucas at the CineLab, the laboratory for cinema and philosophy that is hosting this reading group. I would like to thank very much Susana and Lucas for organizing this, because I think it brings something new to the lab. We had groups working on art and technology, on art and politics, on philosophy and cinema in the broadest sense. But surprisingly, we didn't have any group working specifically on psychoanalysis and cinema, which I think it's very important. So I think it's a great contribution to the lab. And I'm very happy to be here. I've read some of Žižek's texts several years ago, mainly to prepare some classes for the students, and they loved it. They gave rise to huge discussions with the students, so I think they are very compelling and very good, very good food for thought. So I'm very happy to CineLab is hosting this reading group and for having you all here. So thank you very much, Lucas and Susana, for organizing it.
Thank you, Patricia. And Sophia, did you manage the cell phone or not? Still without sound? Okay, you wrote, I'm a psychotherapist, training Lacanian. I'm not familiar with Žižek. I thought this would be an excellent way to get in contact with his work. Okay, thank you. You're from Lisbon, or? Good. So you're welcome. And Maria, can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you. I'm very glad to greet you today, and I'm very thankful to Susana, to Lucas, to Patricia too, who I'm working with at Ipanova this year. I'm researching Ukrainian cinema here, and I must admit that I have never referred to psychoanalysis and psychoanalytical theory, primarily researching film from the perspective of performance theory and phenomenology. So I'm kind of on the surface in this area, and I would like to go deeper. And I think that this is a great initiative and a great opportunity for me too. So I decided to join the group and to read this work that I haven't started yet, but I hope that I will join the further meetings to discuss in these topics, because I'm also interested in the themes of representation, truth, not only in fiction cinema, but also in documentary that was already acknowledged today. So I'm looking forward to it and already excited. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have anybody else? There is Andrea. Pedro wrote something here that his internet is not good, but he wanted to participate after seeing the Mishima and Nashenba talk about in Lacan. And you're welcome, Pedro. And I don't know if Andrea want to say something. Okay, maybe not. Good. So you guys are welcome. We have a practical issue to talk about that is like we're going to try to schedule the sessions with you guys, like propose 2 dates, and you guys can tell us like which one you prefer. So we have the next session, and it would be about, more focused on the chapter on Kieślowski that is called mine is in French. It's the theology, the materialistic theology of Krzysztof Kieślowski. So it's the longest chapter of the book. In the American version of the book, it is actually the whole book. So the whole book in English, it's on Kieślowski, even though it spreads and it has other stuff. But the American book is pretty much this Kieślowski chapter, and it consists in like around 140 pages, 100 pages. I can be one of the persons like main focus on this, but if anyone is interested in Kieślowski, you don't have to understand the whole chapter. You don't have to dominate everything. But if you like Kieślowski and you want to like focus and bring an image or bring a scene or talk a little bit like what this chapter makes you think, you are welcome to develop here and to elaborate together. I'm going to be one of the persons from Kieślowski. I think I would like to do that. Anyone else would like to read a little bit more focused on Kieślowski, or just me?
Yeah, I guess for me that would be the only part of the text accessible, because I don't read French or Portuguese, so it's the only thing I can read.
So good, you do the Kieślowski with me too. But I mean, it's an interesting text, because I think when Žižek, especially in the documentary, the hypothesis of the documentary is on the Kieślowski chapter. It's this idea of the barrier of the symbolic that cinema is going to build, and I think it's very problematic in a psychoanalytical way, especially if we think this psychoanalysis of the ego, of the self. And during the film, he divides a lot the id, the self, and the superego. And I don't know if like I like this because I think in a way it protects a lot the ego and the fantasy. But we can talk about this in the next session. But so when he's thinking about this materialistic theology, he's thinking about like how to build something, a material something that's the symbolic, and that's a little bit the opposite of the psychoanalytical cure. So I think that sometimes Žižek is less of a clinical and more of a cultural critic when he says that in the film. In the book, he doesn't say that much like this. I think he goes a little bit deeper and further. But I can. So me and Max, we try to prepare it a little bit more. But I mean, we don't have to meet. We don't have to talk. It's more like your readings. You bring stuff. I bring stuff. It's just to have people more focused on like trying to guide. But it's not a guide as a professor. It's more like being with this challenge.
Sorry, I think
say
Pedro would like to say something. He raised his hand. Pedro? No, probably not. I don't know. Maybe he's interested in this first chapter. I didn't. Okay. Okay.
But Eric is interested too. I'm also interested.
I will be interested. I guess my interest will be transversal to all 4 chapters and for filmmakers, because my focus will be the question of death, because I'm developing a project on film and death. So I guess that all these filmmakers will, of course, have something to say about this topic. And for example, in the Kieślowski chapter, I remember when he says something about Juliette Binoche in Blue, when she realizes that her whole family just is dead, and the close-up of the eye, he says that it's an entrance to the real, to this loss of reality, of sense of reality and real, and that's the closest we can get to the real, and also to death. So this is not something that I clearly understand how death enters in this psychoanalytic reading of films. So I hope to learn a lot of these sessions, but I will try to follow all the 4 chapters with that in mind. So if you don't know, if you then you want to say something about this question of death and try to help me understanding the topic, it would be great. Yeah.
I think this when he talks about the character of Binoche, it's on grief, how she's gonna manage to work with her grief inside of the symbolic, because he was very hit by the real of the accident. So, but we can talk about this in the next session.
Yeah.
So I think. Do you want to say something else, Susana? Because I talked too much. Maybe you can say something.
You have been great. Yes. In the meantime, Andre, he also wrote his short bio. You can read it in our chat. Maybe it's not with the camera on or something. Yeah. But you would like to work more on Tarkovsky, so we have one interest in Tarkovsky. So great.
I think Barbara Bergamaschi, that is it's a person that I know. She wrote me. She couldn't be today, but she said she wanted to study a little bit more of Tarkovsky and Hitchcock. Okay. She was a PhD in Brazil, and now she's living in Portugal.
Mm.
So
I think that Hitchcock is most likely the chapter that everyone knows. I think those theories on vertigo and so on, I think they are very popular. So it will be it will be nice to also read the others' interpretations on David Lynch, for example, and not just Hitchcock. Although Hitchcock is of course very popular, but let's try to dive into other more obscure and less studied filmmakers. That would be good, yes. And we start well with the Kieślowski, I think.
Yeah, and especially like in the chapter from Kieślowski, he talks about so many other people and stuff, and he talks about video games, and I mean, we are able to talk about a bunch of stuff in one chapter. So it's not because it is Kieślowski that we have to focus on Kieślowski.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Please, please.
Okay. I think I'm particularly interested on the deepening the discussion about Lacanian concept "woman doesn't exist." This is very rich and something I think very important. And this chapter, it has to be discussed so we can understand it.
Can you bring something for us in the Kieślowski, because it's there that he talks about this, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Can you bring something for us? That would be amazing.
I usually, when I try to talk this concept to my students, I find initially a resistance, like, oh, this is sexism. And I say, no, it's not sexism. It's quite the contrary. I think most of the discussions on feminism, they deal with the social aspects of building what is a woman in contrast of what a man is, or they go into biology to talk about differences and how some differences are given meaning that are not initially there. But the concept of woman does not exist is extremely interesting because it talks about the fact that actually in a subject's psyche, there is no definition for woman. There is man as the significant per se, and then woman is the lack of meaning. So that's why it's something scary to begin with. And then Žižek develops his idea, and he goes, for instance, for the suppression of agar from the Alcorán, and the importance of the suppression of the woman who was the mother of the Arabic peoples, and then he goes on about the importance of a meaning that, because he writes tomes about it in different books, but I think that what Žižek talks about Kieślowski is that he's trying to deal with this idea of woman is a void in a matter of significance, of meaning. And then that somehow shapes how he's going to deal with this three women in his three movies. So I think it's quite fundamental. I'm sorry, because I also talk too much. So please feel free to say, okay, we got it. Okay.
No, but it was great. I think Joanna even wants to, you can say, Joanna.
Yes, I think that I would like to think also about that question that Marisa is saying, that the woman doesn't exist here, and also about the Lacanian concept that the relationship doesn't exist, because I think, I don't remember, but I think it's in this chapter that it talks about that formula. So I would like to bring something about that to the next session. I don't know if you are hearing me.
Because there are people already leaving, I just want to propose 2 dates for the next session.
Yes.
One would be the 29th of June. That is a Thursday, the same time. And the other would be the 4th of July, the same time. Which one you guys prefer?